Hello, I'm Bonnie Urbay. Welcome to the Contrary, a discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Up first, women, racism, and the presidential campaign. People of color and pro-immigration groups fought back this week against what they claim are racist comments by Republican presidential hopefuls. Jeb Bush is still reeling from his use of the highly charged term anchor babies. Two Asian American House Democrats told reporters his use of the term makes him unfit for the presidency.
Donald Trump is the one that has been leading the ugly charge on immigrants. And in fact, it's really ridiculous that he is trying to portray himself as taking the high road. We must have a civil dialogue, and we should do it in a way that is stereotype-free.
Donald Trump continued to attack what he calls roving bands of criminal illegal immigrants causing trouble in Baltimore, Chicago, and Ferguson, Missouri. He also tangled with the most important journalists on Spanish-speaking television. GOP pollster Frank Luntz shows Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump is virtually invulnerable to attack by rival 2016 candidates and the media, and stands a good chance of winning the Republican nomination. So, Rina, is Donald Trump making the same old Republican mistakes, or Republicans making the same old mistakes by alienating immigrant Americans and the children of immigrant Americans?
The party as a whole is not, Bonnie. I'll tell you, this is a select few candidates who have not wised up to the minorities and what effect they can have.
But you know, in 2012, when the Republicans lost women, African Americans, Hispanics, you thought they had learned a lesson, but apparently they haven't.
No, absolutely. I think that they're alienating people, but you know what? The Democrats are also alienating a major majority of male white voters.
The Republicans are totally alienating voters, and we need a president that's going to move us forward, not backwards.
All right, but these are pretty heated terms, and Donald Trump, with what Frank Luntz said about him this week, and he's a very reliable pollster, it looks at this point like he's heading toward the nomination, but if he were to win it, could he possibly win the general election by alienating these folks?
I don't think so. He needs to take into consideration that a great much has been misconstrued. Jeb Bush, for example, completely misconstrued the facts on the anchor babies debate and blaming Asians for it. At 1% of Chinese tourists that visit this country are engaging in this birth tourism. 200,000 of 2.2 billion Chinese tourists. These Chinese tourists contribute $24 billion to our economy when they come in and tour here. So I think this is just wrong. He's certainly discounted Asian Americans as voting segments and voting blocks that are powerful in certain parts of the country. So it's going to take these candidates wising up. I agree Donald Trump will lose the election if he does not wise up to minorities and the effect that they can have.
Isn't it numerically... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
Isn't it numerically impossible to win the election by alienating the Latino voters, which is the largest single, fastest growing block of voters in this country? So forget Asian Americans. Let's start with what he said about, and is continuing to say about, Latinos in this country, his treatment of Jorge Ramos. I mean, building this wall, deporting 11 million immigrants from this country.
And what amazes me is that the other candidates have not come out in a very strong way at all. There were a couple words from Carly Fiorina, but really, it's
and in
just
the past, she has come out strongly against
on different
But their silence
yeah,
different issues.
So she's not afraid of Trump. But what's interesting is the more he doubles down on this exclusionary approach to ethnic groups as he campaigns, the stronger he gets in the polls. He's in double-digit, advantage at this point.
But if you think about it, I mean, as you said earlier, he is very appealing to white males, and particularly uneducated white males and some uneducated white women. That's where he's doing really well in the polls.
Right, but you would never want to alienate where you're not. You want to bring a coalition. You want to bring all the different groups together. So for him, right off the bat, to decide, oh, I've given up on this voting block or that voting block is really a poor campaign.
He might
right,
not be
but my question
as we
is,
think.
My question is, and he's also, and a lot of people say he's not really running for anything except more money from NBC when he goes back to his real job being a TV star. But assuming that he actually is, what is it about this country? What does it say about race relations in this country? What does it say about mass immigration over the last 20, 30 years? I mean, obviously, a lot of white people are afraid of this, or what do you think it says?
Well, Donald Trump's remarks have defrayed from a really substantive discussion we could be having on immigration. That is the problem here. He's somebody who's throwing bombs, and he's doing it for his own personal gain. He likes to be sensational. He's really bold and brash because it attracts him attention. This past week, we heard about Joe Biden potentially entering the race. People like Joe Biden for the same reasons. He's authentic. He speaks what's on his mind. And
but he's not racist.
Well, his 7-11.
How does it make you feel to hear Trump talk like this?
No, Biden would not throw bombs, but he's authentic. Right. He's saying things that people don't.
He talks like the average person.
Exactly.
It's one thing to like your style of talking, but your content. I mean, how do you feel as a Republican supporter? I would be so offended by Trump.
I obviously am. I don't even have to say it on air. It's obvious. I mean, it's apparent. I don't go around supporting Trump because I think he's a complete misogynist. I think he's racist. He hates women, and he's in it for himself. And that goes without speaking. Any woman here could tell you that Megyn Kelly, what he's done to her, has been completely wrong.
But 60% approval rating amongst Republican women?
And you know what's interesting to me? I've been in politics a long time, and we used to always say, you never want to pick a fight with somebody who's got barrels of ink and they're going to be writing about you or they're going to be covering you.
David and Goliath.
And here he is not only alienating these ethnic groups, 16 million Hispanics, fastest growing voting bloc in the United States, but taking on the media, taking on the Univision, Walter Cronkite in such a dismissive way.
That ink is spilled for him, and look at the issues that are being ignored right now. I mean, it's all Trump all the time. The shooting was the Roanoke shooting was the first thing to take Trump out of the polls. The stock market,
I'm laughing because
on Monday.
I watched him on CNN, which seems to be covering him wall to wall, and his response to everything is, "If I'm president, we'll fix it."
Yeah, we'll fix it.
And
I'll build that wall.
That's what he said about, and that's about as substantive as it gets. And that's what he said about the shooting.
But the media keeps eating him up. I mean, the stock market on Monday was, again, it was like all Monday, it was like there was no Trump. It was, oh my God, we can focus on other things right now.
It says more about the current state of politics in this country. I want to put the racism, all that aside. The fact that he's polling so high says more about what people want.
Entertainment.
They are entertained. He's bold, he's brash, he's saying what's unpopular, and it's making for really
good media. It's the freak show,
ADD and
he's
entertainment.
the master of ceremonies.
Indeed.
What about, are Asian Americans overlooked as part of the immigration issue?
In general, I think so. I mean, didn't we used to be called the model minority? I think so. I think everybody is so caught up in thinking about illegal immigrants and Latinos that we do get overlooked. There's a lot of issues to be resolved about legal immigrants that are here.
And George, it was Jeb Bush actually said a year ago that the Asian Americans, whether the Republican Party could reach out to Asian Americans, would be the canary in the coal mine to see if we could be inclusive big tent. And then look, he goes and
there goes the big tent. The air's coming out of the big tent every second. Let us know what you think. Please follow me on Twitter at Bonnie or Bay. From politics to sexual assault. Have colleges done enough to stop sexual assault? As students return from summer break, the effectiveness of new programs, laws, and initiatives will be tested. Colleges and educators in a new trend are approaching the problem by focusing on bystanders. The White House has redoubled its It's On Us campaign, stressing that everyone is responsible for ending rape. Organizations that fight rape say the old approach focused on victims and perpetrators, which left out most people. By focusing on bystanders, they hope to connect with everyone to take responsibility for changing the culture.
There's such a bright light that is now shining on this problem, which for many years I think was really a dirty little secret. And I see college campuses all over the country that are taking steps, a lot of it driven by students, which is terrific. We have a bill that we've worked hard on to get bipartisan support, and we have strong bipartisan support for the bill. I'm confident that portions of it, if not all of it, will be included in the reauthorization of the Higher Education Act that we will be debating this fall.
But many charge the culture remains the same. This week, a fraternity at Old Dominion University in Virginia stirred outrage by hanging sexually charged banners aimed at incoming female students. Advocates say it's just another example of the rape culture on campus. So, Megan, will this bystander approach work?
I think it will, because what it does is it changes the whole ecosystem. When you do a training on a campus and you say, well, you know, we've got to teach people not to be assaulters, we've got to teach people not to be victims, it creates a binary and a polarization of men against women. This way, it brings everybody in to this idea of changing the culture itself. Everybody's involved. The bystanders feel that they have a role to play, and they do.
9 out of 10 victims are female of campus sexual assault, and I think that in and of itself tells us a lot. This isn't just a female issue. I mean, even that one person matters, and so getting men to be a part of the discussion, orientations on college campuses that involved talking about alerts, that, hey, we're going to send out technology alerts on your cell phones and over email telling you when there's a suspicious person on campus. Allow women and empower them.
Wait, suspicious person on campus. You're talking about outsiders.
Well, that's just one of the things, right?
Right, but I mean, they're talking. This is really about like one guy at a frat party watching another guy getting a woman drunk and saying to him, hey, listen, don't take her anywhere.
These alerts can run the gamut. They can be a suspicious person on campus to, hey, this happened in X, Y, and Z fraternity or sorority last night, and with this sorority involved. I think exposing this stuff helps empower women on campuses, because then they can be more proactive and more alert about protecting themselves.
Do you think men will chip in and
yeah, you know, I think too often when we focus on rape culture, we demonize all men. But the thing is a lot of times these frat brothers have a heads up on situations. So I think getting them involved, empowering the bystanders is a really important step.
Right. I mean, here you have, but I don't believe that it's going to fix any of the distrust between the sexes, because if a guy says, no, don't sleep with her because she's probably going to accuse you of rape, versus women saying, don't sleep with him because he's probably going to rape you. I mean, I don't know if it's going to heal the distrust, but it will at least hopefully help end the
But I don't think that's what we're aiming for. Aren't we aiming for, hey, the punch bowl is spiked with some kind of drug, don't drink it?
Or I know that's not what's happening. It's not roofies.
Who's supposed to tell these girls that? Parents?
It's a buddy
What role
system.
A buddy system. I think it has to be one of the guys in the frat.
Exactly.
That's what I'm
10
talking
years
about.
ago, I was president of the Pan-Atlantic Council at West Virginia University, a major state school which had a huge Greek system, and I believed in the buddy system. I believed that only sorority sisters can help fellow sorority sisters. Whatever we came from home with was what we came from home with. Parents put what they can in your minds, and they try to empower you and get you to wise up to what's happening around you, but truly there's no substitute for peer systems, and these peer systems need to be stronger.
So why not that instead of the bystander, if not, or both?
It's a combination. It's a continuum of
whatever.
things that
It's
solve
a
this
changing of
problem.
culture, because let's face it, a lot of this has been going on for years and years. We're hearing about it now, and what I love about this legislation is that it's going to require surveys to be done by every other year.
But Megan, you know, I'm not questioning that some of this has been going on for years and years. It always went on, okay, as far as I'm concerned. But I even asked Gloria Steinem. When I went to a 20,000 person university in New York City. I was there for several years. I never heard of any of my classmates having this kind of situation. And I said to her, you know, was it happening then and nobody talked about it? Or was it, you know, or is it happening now, which is really weird to be happening post third wave feminism, right?
Yeah.
And she said, nobody will ever know. And it's true. And I get the feeling, quite frankly, that it's happening a lot more now than it was back then.
Well, I think it's a combination of hearing about it a lot more.
It's being redefined as
the internet,
what it is.
But also the internet is, you know, all kinds of stuff gets put online.
But rape culture has always existed.
That did not
always
exist.
Because it was hookup culture. Now it's being
when I was in
redefined.
The transparency
as
and the data, the data makes the invisible actionable. And that's what I love about this legislation, is that they're going to be doing these surveys in places where they didn't think they had a problem. The new chancellor of the University of Texas, who was an admiral in the military, said he's instituting a longitudinal study with this year's freshman class. Why? Because when he was in the military, he did a study on sexual assault and was amazed at the numbers that came out in this
well,
this
survey.
survey.
It's whatever we are getting more violent, you know? I mean, it's like we hear about all these shootings, we're hearing about the migrant crisis, there's so many wars going on. It's like, has this always been like this, or do we just see it
The
and hear
media
about it
is
all the
reporting
time?
it a whole lot more, and when it
You
comes
get it
to
on your
going
cell
to
phone.
those,
You used to have to go home and watch the news to get it.
and on those surveys, surveys, I mean, depending on how they're done, they could be inflated because we know the 1 in 5 statistic is completely flawed. And so if these surveys on these college campuses follow that same model, then yeah, it's going to look like 1 in 5 when it's not really what's going on.
What do you think is going on?
Well, I think that hookup culture is being redefined as rape culture. Women are being told to reinterpret everything that happens to them, any negative experience, as rape. You look at the recent university, those words that they said were really loudish, they were really disgusting words. But were they advocating for rape? They were not. But now everything is being defined as rape.
Thoughts on that?
Well, I think that the words that were on those signs at those fraternities were a reflection of a culture that was objectifying women, which is never good and does contribute.
Sororities also had words. The sororities also had banners that were negative toward men.
And then it could be that, you know, we have to look at those too.
Right, but we're
what
not.
Can women do, young women, college women do, to stop the culture? And does part of it have to do with the way you dress?
But why is it women's responsibility?
It's not.
Why aren't we telling men not to rape?
Because
we're still
men
focusing
know not to rape.
Well,
Yes, they do.
Wait,
no, because then the whole...
Wait, Anushay. wait. Men are being told not to rape.
Yes,
and
but they're also being told that colleges don't want to deal with it, and you will get away with it. Colleges expel for cheating. They expel for stealing. I went to UVA. We knew this stuff was going on for so long, let me tell you. And I graduated a long time ago. I want to say it was just the other day.
So
but
that
it
may have
wasn't.
happened in the past. The pendulum has swung now where we completely eviscerate due process, and the Obama administration and McCaskill have been very instrumental in that, in swinging the pendulum to the fact now where you don't need any sort of evidence, you just need an accusation, and you can expel a young man and destroy his future life. And on the contrary, when it comes to helping women,
but normally
all you're doing is expelling. All you're doing is expelling, so he's that out on the street.
Just to your point about the due process, this legislation would give, within 24 hours of deciding that an action will be taken, telling both the accused and the woman accusing so that they can become involved in that process.
But let's know what's happening. But they're not allowed to cross-examination.
Stop, please. Behind the headlines, a daughter's harrowing journey through sexual assault, eating disorder, and mental illness, and a mother's persistent response.
I think inherently when you are assaulted at whatever age, whether you're very young or you're very old, it's that you feel that deep-seated shame. It's just very shameful. And there are these extreme levels that you put yourself through of, well, was it really, because I had a little to drink, was it really as bad? Am I allowed to even call it sexual assault?
Elena Dunkel was raped at 13 years of age. The assault changed her personality. It eventually led to years of struggle with an eating disorder, anorexia, which also seriously impacted her mother. In Elena Vanishing, co-authors Elena and Claire Dunkel tell this poignant story, each from her own perspective, shining light on issues that affect both young adults and their families.
She was silent and she couldn't sleep, she couldn't eat. We became very concerned, particularly as that behavior persisted, and we could see that she just was like just like a raw nerve.
According to the University of Maryland Medical Center, anorexia nervosa affects as many as 3 in 100 teens. Elena suffered for years, moving from one treatment center to another. At one point, she was on 11 different medications.
When you go into an eating disorder center and you have a set amount of time given by your healthcare system, if you're at such a severely malnourished weight, you're not going to have any memory of anything or have even the energy and the ability to connect. And so you want to just pile on the weight so that the body has enough reserves to be able to start processing. And one of the best ways to gain weight is through antidepressants. And so one of the treatment centers that I was at would do that for normally 3 to 4 months, just pack the antidepressants on you.
Claire supported Elena through multiple rounds of treatment, something common for people with eating disorders.
The most important thing I would say to other parents and to other caregivers is that it's very important to realize that this is not about a diet. This is not just sort of a silly adolescent behavior. This is a very, very serious mental illness that is extremely dangerous.
Although Elena has recovered, there have been long-lasting effects on her body. She had a miscarriage as a young adult because she was unable to support a child.
There's still a lot of medical issues going on. I have almost no sense of taste or smell because of purging and the acid. I have osteoporosis. My bones are 60 years old. I've broken hips and wrists and ribs and fingers and toes, and there's cheekbones, and there's a lot of the medical issues that are probably pretty much permanent, and that's something that I'm now, that anger towards my past self that I'm having to deal with at this point.
The Dunkels decided to co-write Elena Vanishing, to share the illness from both perspectives and describe how sexual assault led to a much larger issue.
Our entire family suffered from this crime for years, and there are still things that are left over. There are still health problems that Elena has that are left over from this eating disorder. Our lives will never be what they were before.
One of the things that we did stress is that the book has no calories, no weights, no numbers, no tips. It doesn't disclose any information that someone could use in a negative way, how I got to the weight I did or how much I weighed. There are no pictures in it, which was important to me. We really wanted to make sure that the reader could follow the emotional journey.
So Anushay, do we, as a society, take eating disorders seriously enough?
I think we take it seriously enough, but we don't understand really the complexities of, what a brave mother and daughter. I can't imagine as a mom to go through that. And the more we hear these kinds of stories, the more we'll understand.
I don't think we take it seriously enough. I think we teach women to shrink themselves. When I was in elementary school and middle school in the 90s here in the U.S., I remember knowing two friends, close friends, who were bulimic. And I think the problem is that this is a body image problem. Glamour magazine did a great report showing a 20-point difference between the 80s and 90s in how girls feel about their bodies. Millennial women, we're dealing with it even worse because we see body image issues on Facebook, on Twitter. We do it to ourselves. It's not celebrities anymore who we're idolizing. It's the average woman who we want to be skinny like.
But there's also a converse to that, whereas if anyone is actually thin just naturally, they're now being accused of being anorexic or bulimic. I had that charge thrown against me all the time when I was younger, and it's just, no, I'm sick, claiming that by other kids, claiming that I must have had an eating disorder just because I was naturally thin.
Huh. And what did that do to you?
Well, it started making me think that there was something wrong with me. You start to get it in your head that, wait, am I not eating? No, I'm eating plenty. Look, I go out and have a burger all the time. I'm just naturally thin.
We body shame too much in this country. You're right. I was very curvy, and I had
You're never right. It's like, you're either too fat when you're younger, then you get pregnant. People are like, you're too fat when you're pregnant. Then it's like, did you lose the weight yet? It's never ending. It just changes.
Exactly. You know what was scary about this book is that you realize she went to like 4 different centers, and they seemed to each have a very different approach, and putting her on all kinds of different drugs. It just felt like we have not gotten our arms around this problem. 1 in 3 of our mostly young girls are subject to this, and something like 20% end up dying of a symptom of something that occurred as a result of their anorexia. It is incredibly serious. Why haven't we done more research? Why hasn't there been more insurance coverage? In this book, several of the patients had to leave because they're because their coverage
in many ways it points
expired.
out that mental health in this country is in its infancy. And no, not a disaster because of any other issue, but just because mental health and the use of antidepressants, which is very widespread, as I mentioned earlier, is doctors don't really know what they're doing.
And I think Megan had a good point that everywhere you go, they treat it completely different. So at one point she was on 11 pills. I can't imagine that if that was happening at one center, that they thought 11 pills for this was a good treatment. It's just they're just like in the
doctors
dark.
Part of the problem is that you see one doctor for this, you see one doctor for that. Unless you report all that to your GP, nobody's keeping track of how many medications you're on.
The continuum of care is not there, and I think until we achieve that, we won't make any progress in this.
All right, that's it for this edition. Please follow me on Twitter and visit our website, pbs.org/to the contrary. And whether you agree or think To the contrary, see you next week.